In this video, I'm going to show you an exercise that resolved my chronic 15-year hearing loss in just 4 weeks. And I know that sounds crazy, but once you understand the connection between your neck and hearing, it's going to make a whole lot more sense. I'm going to teach you what the connection is between your hearing and your neck. And yes, I'll show you how to do this exercise step by step. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so quick backstory. I grew up playing music at an extremely high level, and I was a professional from a very young age. Now, one night I'm on a gig, I turn my head and tweak my neck, and then a bunch of chronic symptoms start. Of these chronic symptoms, the most troubling one was this perpetual sense of fullness in my ear and this inability to hear. Not exactly ideal for a professional musician. So I went to traditional channels, going to PT and audiology, but nothing that they were suggesting was working. Now, I was still optimistic even though I had a lack of results because my hearing would get better or worse depending on a number of factors. So if I was standing in a certain position or breathing a certain way, or even relative to my stress, my hearing would get better or worse. So again, I was optimistic that this wasn't permanent, but the problem was I didn't know why it was happening, I didn't know how to influence it, and I certainly didn't know how to get changes that stuck. Well, here we are 15 years later, and now I understand the problem and have developed this exercise that I'm going to show you in a second that has helped me to get changes that actually stick. But before we do that, let's cover the connection between your neck and hearing. When hearing issues are related to neck issues, we call this cervicogenic hearing loss. And now the good news is that as far as we know, cervicogenic hearing loss is reversible. Now the simple big picture of this is that if we improve function of the neck and get it back to 100%, then we're probably also going to get that hearing back as well. Now the bad news here is that the research is really sparse, and in terms of the mechanisms, a lot is unclear. Now here is my best guess as to what the mechanisms could be. Now the first possible mechanism has to do with how we take sensory information and sync it up with other signals from the brain and body. Under normal circumstances, all these sensations work together, and that allows us to have a very well-calibrated acoustic reflex. This causes the muscles inside of the middle ear to respond appropriately to auditory stimuli. When we don't get that input, these signals don't sync up in the way that they're supposed to. And one possible result of this is that the small muscles inside of the middle ear become hyper-responsive. They contract too much and are too sensitive to sounds, causing that full, tight feeling in the middle ear. Now the other mechanism has to do with two small muscles that go from your soft palate into your middle ear. These are your tensor and levator veli palatini muscles, and these could potentially be impacted in two ways. The first is that it gets information from the nerves that communicate with the neck. And the second is a more mechanical one where these muscles start to change their function because they're supporting the stability of the upper cervical spine and head. So whether it's hyper-responsiveness in those small muscles in the middle ear, or it's some change in the function of these palate muscles, either through the nervous system or mechanically, it really doesn't matter. What we need to do is improve the function of the neck, get the movement back, and then once we do that, we'll be able to restore the signals, get them syncing up with the other signals, and thus restore our hearing. Now, unfortunately, even with this big picture view, it's often hard to get changes, and especially hard to get changes that actually stick. And I think the reason for this comes down to 3 core problems, which we'll go through first, and then finally we'll get into the exercise. Now the first issue is an inability to sense and feel this area. As we said, the sensory information we get at the level of the neck needs to sync up with the rest of the sensory information in the body to have a normal functioning neck and probably to have a normal functioning auditory system. Now after injury, the brain often shuts down our ability to feel this area, and because the neck is so mobile, we can usually find creative ways to work around it. Now the second issue that we're going to face, and which actually complicates the first issue, is compensation underneath the neck. Now this is going to be especially likely if this has been going on for a long time. So here's an example of how this would work. Let's say I hurt my neck and I can't turn it to the left. So instead of turning to the left, my body underneath can actually compensate. So if I'm looking this way, I could just turn my body this way to get my line of sight to be straight ahead. Now, if I go to try to retrain my head and neck in this position, it's very unlikely I'm going to actually be able to sense and feel my neck in the balanced way that I'm going to need to restore neck function and hearing. So first, we need to get the rest of the body playing nice under the head to create that nice, even, solid foundation, which is going to help us restore sensation, which will then allow these senses to reintegrate. All right, and the last issue here is the irritability and symptoms that come with working directly with the upper neck. Now, when we're talking about cervicogenic hearing loss, we're talking about an upper neck issue. The upper neck also is involved in a number of other functions in the body, including balance and spatial orientation. And that's just to name a few. Now, if we start working with the upper neck, it is super easy to fire off a whole host of symptoms that will discourage us from continuing to do the work necessary to alleviate the hearing loss. So instead, we need to find a way to work with the neck and restore some of that movement without triggering off these symptoms. Now, the exercise that we're going to go through is called the Chaplin wall march. Yes, I did name it after myself, and it's got 3 elements to it that are going to address each of the issues that we laid out. The first thing you're going to notice is that we put the head on the wall. And because of the angle that we're leaning at, as we're leaning forward, the wall actually pushes the head down into those upper cervical segments, which gives us a little bit of sensation feedback as to where we are in space. Now, from this position, we're going to start to march. What the marching is going to do is it's going to help us to turn the body to the left and the right. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to move those upper cervical segments, allowing them to rotate from a body moving on head perspective. And number 2, it's going to allow us to start to undo some of those compensations that happen underneath the head and the neck. Now, last but not least, throughout the exercise, we're going to be using a slight chin tuck to engage the deep muscles of the neck, as well as cueing the tongue and jaw to help us support and normalize that function. As we're doing this is going to keep the upper cervical spine in a nice stable position and reduce the probability of creating those irritable symptoms that discourage us from doing the work. So now that we know the keys to this exercise, let's go through it step by step. All right, so here it is, the Chaplin wall march. You're going to need a towel for this. This is going to go between your forehead and the wall. So you're going to get your forehead on the towel, and then from here we'll start by working with the position of the head and neck. You're going to think about pulling that towel down the wall by doing a gentle chin tuck. So crown of the head goes up, front of the head pulls down against that towel. And this is just subtle, just enough to engage some of the deeper muscles of the neck. Now we're going to enhance this by adding the tongue and jaw to it. To do this, we'll collect some saliva on the top of the tongue, we'll initiate a swallow, and then once the tongue comes up into the roof of the mouth, we're going to pause it there and try to keep it there through the rest of the activity. This is going to enhance that upper cervical stability and help the neck, jaw, tongue, and soft palate to all play nice together. Once we have that, we're going to then add the marching component. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to allow us to rotate subtly underneath the head and the neck, but it's also going to provide a challenge to help these upper cervical muscles work a little bit better to stabilize that upper cervical spine. So again, slight chin tuck, little swallow, then we'll begin to march. 1 knee up at a time, alternating, doing our best to keep tongue into the roof of the mouth, slight activation of those deep muscles, and we're trying to prevent any really obvious rotation of the head and upper neck, and instead keep that relatively stable while allowing just really small rotations from the ground up. Now, to increase the challenge, we can step away with the feet and then allow the hips to come forward just a little bit. Okay, and even just doing that, I can feel the challenge has increased pretty substantially. We'll go through all those checkpoints, slight chin tuck, tongue up in the roof of the mouth, then march. Now, as you're doing this, if it's a little bit too challenging, you can simply either stay a little bit closer to the wall to reduce the demands, or even use hand support. So here in this initial position, you can hold on to the wall, chin tuck, tongue in the roof of the mouth, and then march just using your hands a little bit, okay, as you're moving side to side. Now, another regression here, and this works really well if you're just feeling like a little off that day or if things are already sore, is just get on the wall, and instead of doing a full-on march, where you're going side to side, use a little hand support, and then just bring 1 knee forward a little bit as the other goes back, and then alternate. Again, slight chin tuck, tongue and jaw in the roof of the mouth, and just rotating side to side, inducing that body moving on head rotation. Now, if you want further information on how to implement this the most effectively, then go down to the link in the description and check out my new neck protocol. Depending on when you see this video, you're either going to see a link for the priority list and you can get on that to be part of the official launch, or you're going to see the sales page and you can get it right now. Now, as always, thanks a bunch for watching this video. If you're not already subscribed, please do that. Like this video, comment any questions or your experience down below. And as always, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.